Good afternoon, everybody. It's Monday, March 19th, 2018, 2:30 p.m., and we're having our monthly meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Elections at the Elections Office on North Frederick Avenue in Gaithersburg. We have a quorum. All our members are present, so we will begin our meeting. First item is the approval of the minutes from February 26, 2018.
Mr. President, I move table the minutes because some of the remark wasn't included. There wasn't enough time to do that. So I want to move to table the minutes.
Until next month?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did get it late, which is understandable on occasion. Does anybody have any objection to that? Okay, let's...
And is it, I mean, you had indicated in an email that you wanted something added. Did you give language? Enough. I mean, is that what you...
That's the one, yeah, but it wasn't enough time, so we're going to do it next month. We're going to do it from now until next month.
Okay, so we'll table that till next month?
Does that mean that we're going to get another version to review 10 days before the next meeting?
Can we do that?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we're going to have an executive session later.
I'm sorry, do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Okay, we are going to have an executive session later. 3 topics. 1, our security plan. 2, there's a request for a confidential voter. And the last
is personnel.
Personnel. So we'll do that at the end of our meeting. Okay, public comments. Lisa, is anybody that...
Yes, we have Ms. Garland who would like to address the board. Thank you.
Welcome, Linda. Do we have a chair or no?
Thank you.
Well.
Bring your chair.
It's okay. I'll just...
Okay, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. I spoke to you, I believe, 2 board meetings ago about the dangers of online ballot delivery, and now there is a bill in both the House and the Senate that addresses this head on. As I mentioned last time, our current system is totally insecure. It's subject to hacking, and there's no good authentication. Right now, the authentication is all up front, which unfortunately in our world is worthless because Social Security numbers and that information is all over the internet, and there's no signature on the back end. And as you know, there's a huge administrative burden, mostly in the local boards. These ballots come in unmarked envelopes with handwritten return addresses and, if we're lucky, tracking numbers instead of the easy pre-printed envelopes that can be swiped. And also all these ballots, as you know, have to be hand duplicated, and that's a very laborious process that may be error prone. Last time I spoke, I mentioned at the State Board of Election meeting, they said that they had not received any letter from you saying that it was burdens or anything like that, and you guys were going to look into it. And I just wanted to follow up on that and ask whether you guys are going to be writing the board, informing them about the burden it places at local boards. And I also want to mention 2 things that are new factors since I spoke to you 2 months ago. One is that it's been acknowledged that the Russians did attack the online ballot request system. So it is very relevant that that's one of their targets. And number 2, that these online delivered ballots are only being returned at a rate of 71%. That's pretty low. That means that it might have been done for good reasons to make it more convenient for voters, but a lot of these ballots that are delivered this way are not being returned. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Lynn, I just would like to say I actually agree with your position on the issue. I'm not sure I fully comprehend all the security problems you've identified, and particularly the notion that the Russians may have attempted to interfere with the online ballot. I think that's the first I've heard of that particular thing. But I agree that it is a burden. I think the problem is that we may have difficulty reaching a consensus on this board about delivering such a letter, because I'm not sure all my colleagues agree with my position. Do you have a sense of how leaders in the Democrat community feel about this at all? Here in Montgomery County?
I don't think the facts are a partisan issue. It shouldn't be Democrat or Republican. I think the facts are what kind of burden was it? And that's what the state board said. They weren't informed with the facts. I'm not saying you have to take a position one way or whether this is a great system or not a great system, but they're asking and saying, is it easy to receive a ballot that doesn't have a barcode who the voter is? That's a fact. And how burdensome is it? How possible is there for errors? Those are facts. It should not be a partisan issue.
No, it shouldn't, but I know that some people will characterize any attempt to narrow this, even for what I would consider are legitimate grounds, as an effort to, disenfranchise, suppress voters. Those kind of charges get bandied about. So I just wondered if you had any sense, in the Democrat community, how people feel about this.
I don't have a sense. I approach this issue in a nonpartisan basis.
Jim.
Jackie?
Lynn, I want to thank you for bringing the issue and staying with it. I appreciate it. I also agree with you. And I think the security concerns around it are myriad. We just don't have the machines to take care of it now. And I want to thank you for bringing it to us and bringing it to the state. I appreciate that personally.
Well, I think in general the state is the one who deals with the security concerns, but I think what they need to hear from you are what the administrative burden is and administrative concerns are.
Did you have something?
Yes, I do. I don't speak for the Democrat community, but just speaking for myself. As you know, Lynn, I don't necessarily agree with you on this particular issue. I do have a number of questions surrounding it. I guess my first question is that you indicated that the Russians attacked the online ballot request system, and our understanding from what we've been told by the state board is merely that the Russians probed the whatever portion of
the voter registration system.
Probed the voter registration system. On what do you base the idea that the Russians attacked the online ballot request system?
Based on what Nikki Charleston said at a meeting to the Maryland Cybersecurity Council on January 25th, and what she said to the House and Ways Committee on the 26th. And the online ballot request system and the online ballot registration system can be considered one web application together, I believe.
So
they're tied together.
All right, so we may be talking about the same thing, and it sounds like we're talking about.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
But it sounds like we're talking about a probe, not necessarily a attack. To some people, would mean different things.
Did you remember we sat through her talk
yes,
on this during the mail conference?
I do.
I was looking at her presentation, I think that was circulated in advance, because I think she's given this talk to multiple things. I think
yes.
it says here that in August 2016, they noticed some unusual activity on our online registration and ballot request system and immediately blocked the IP address. So if you read it carefully, maybe there was some attempt to probe. I think hack would be too strong a word, because she has adamantly said that it was not a penetration of the system. Right,
and obviously the words are less important than what actually took place. The concerns that you have about this system, do those concerns apply equally regardless of the status of the voters who are using it? So, for example, if it's totally insecure and it were used only for military and overseas voters, do we run the same risk for those voters of attack or insecurity as we do for either disabled voters or all voters?
I think there are two things to keep in mind. One is the larger the attack surface, the more attractive it is. So by limiting the number of voters that use the system, you make it less attractive to attack and you reduce the risk.
And less convenient for voters. And if the concern is security, I mean, it sounds like the security issue is, other than being a tempting target, it sounds like the security issue is the same. I mean, if you say there's no signature on the back end, that's true for everybody who uses this system.
Yeah, right. So it's definitely a trade-off.
Right.
It's a trade-off, and it's the size of the attack surface.
Okay. And then when you said that the returns on these votes is 71%, do you happen to know what the returns are on the vote by U.S. mail?
Yes, 82%.
Okay.
That's what the figure showed in the last election. So it's a very substantial difference.
These are statewide figures?
Yes.
Marianne?
Lynn has mentioned that, she was here in the January meeting, I think it was, and addressed this, and I was surprised at the time that we had not sent something forward to the state board, and my understanding was that we were going to after that meeting, and it appears that we still haven't. What's the status of that, or why haven't we dealt with the issue that...
It wasn't brought up at the February meeting, and it just...
One of the items for discussion today is this bill and whether the board wants to take a position on the bill.
It's on today's agenda.
Oh, and that's the bill you were referring to? One of the bills? You said there are two bills?
I don't know.
Yeah, Senate Bill
that's on our
1126
agenda.
and House Bills 1655.
Is the text of the bill in our folders? Because I don't see it.
No, we'll make copies. It in essence limits the web delivery system to military overseas voters and the disabled community.
David raises a point. I think we've also requested at maybe it was the last meeting or the one before that we be given copies of the legislation when we're going to be discussing it at the board meeting, to have it in advance. I know we've raised that issue before.
Well, the other thing is that maybe I didn't read the agenda carefully. Is it on the printed agenda that we're going to be considering this piece of legislation today?
No, it just says legislation.
Okay, because as Alex pointed out, there would probably be some views in the greater community that larger than us. I personally would prefer to hear what they have to say before taking a position. I think that it's a different question as to whether we can say to those who are interested what the burden is. That, as Lynn says, we all know what the burden is. Whether the burden is worth it, whether we support or oppose a significant change to the available voting systems, that to me would be something that I think we'd want to hear from the public about. Before we were to weigh in and say that the fact that it's an administrative burden, we might want to hear from other experts in addition to Lynn about the security question. I think the state would probably have something to say about that as well. But as far as the burden, that I think we can probably speak to.
Well, there's no dispute about the burden. It's whether or not it outweighs,
But there's no...
But we haven't told them what the burden is.
And we haven't discussed what the cost is, not just in money, but also in how it might affect turnout to not have this as an available option for those who are currently utilizing it.
Has Mayo taken a position on this? Do we know?
Stewart said Mayo were they going to oppose it?
Stewart personally told me he didn't like the bill. I don't know whether he was speaking for Mayo when he said it. He is very uncomfortable with this.
I think the Democratic Central Committee almost certainly would oppose it, right? They would say would you agree that they would argue the burden is worth it?
I don't know what they would say. I have not discussed this issue with them, so I don't know what they would say. I know from my own experience that a lot of young people and procrastinators, not all young people being procrastinators, not all procrastinators being young people, but a lot of young people and procrastinators utilize the online ballot request, number one, because they're used to doing as much online as they can, and number two, because they can request it much later in the process than if they request by mail. That also allows them to be exposed to that much more of the events of the campaign. If something breaks late in the campaign and you have to request your ballot, and vote your ballot earlier, you don't necessarily get the benefit of all the information that other people have.
Yes. May I just clarify something? This legislation allows all voters to still request their absentee ballot using the online ballot request system. It's just a question of delivery. The request is still online.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mayo, to answer the question earlier, sorry for my delay, Mayo opposed House Bill 1658 when it was taken up in committee, and the general Way that has been discussed in my hearing has been that because we already have over 2,000 domestic voters who have applied for email delivery of their ballots, that there was a concern about either treating people differently based on whether they'd already applied for it or whether just moving forward they were going to be told that they couldn't request it, or potentially needing to go back to those 2,000 people and telling them they no longer have that option.
And let me point out that on page 5 of the legislation, section 2, they claim this to be an emergency measure, which means it takes effect immediately, not after the election. Most legislation passed in Annapolis takes effect July 1. This is not in that category. So this specifically does apply to the current election and to all the people who've already requested their ballots and want to get their ballot in that fashion.
David, do you support sending a letter to the state board describing to them the administrative burden on us from this system?
I would say it differently. I would say I don't object to a letter to the state board that describes the administrative burden as long as that's all it does. If we are going to take a position on the legislation, I would want to give both parties and candidates and anyone else out there the opportunity to tell us what they think.
And they can be different things.
I'm sorry?
They can be different things. The letter vis-a-vis taking a stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They could be. And I would and like I said, if what you're looking for is unanimity, then I would say that I would go along with a letter that describes the burden in factual terms, without being unduly dramatic, I guess is the way I would put it. But I think that the facts do, I think the facts are very important. We all know that we spend an enormous amount of time, doing this. My own hope is that at some point there will be a technology developed that will supersede this whole discussion, because I think it's much more likely that we're going to be moving more towards the electronic than less.
I agree with that completely.
And I'm really concerned about the idea of telling people who've already requested this under the rules that they exist today that we're going to change it. I'm also concerned if we're going to change the rules for people who want to do it for this election but haven't requested it yet, so that the early birds get to do it, but those who wait don't. Because I think it'll be very confusing to people to have the rules of the game change. At a very, at this point it would be basically at a late time.
Well, I'm concerned that I was at the state board meeting when the issue came up, and a state board member made the point that they had not heard from any of the counties regarding this issue, etc. And certainly they'd want to know if there were issues out there. And it struck me at the time, certainly that this was something that we should respond to the state board on, because we do have issues with it. And I'm disappointed that we haven't followed through.
What's the time frame on when? Do you know when to vote on this?
Well, today's the crossover day, so
The hearing
procedural.
When? Where is it?
22nd
The
is
hearing in the Senate is this Thursday. So
Thursday.
having a letter before that would be wise.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, I would favor sending a letter.
And I thought we did. I thought that's what we last.
No, we didn't.
I thought we voted on that last month.
We voted on it in January. I think we.
Yeah, we didn't discuss it last month.
Yeah, I think we did, and I guess I'd be curious why it hasn't gone out.
Kevin, can you
Actually, I
send
think
it?
the statement, I think subsequent to the January meeting, I indicated that upon review of my file, I did not see a letter that had been sent to the state board explaining that there were other issues that this board wished to convey to the state board that I assume were more pressing, and perhaps maybe I just missed sending the other letter, but last month I think we got sidetracked into other issues, and this was not part of the discussion.
I think we should definitely.
Well, what's the bottom line with the letter? We're not going to take a position on the bill. We're just going to outline the burdens that we face.
I think it sounds like the board is in favor of sending something that says, considering these are the issues we have with processing web delivery ballots.
Yeah, Mary Ann, when you were at the state board meeting, were they talking about legislation to change the rule? Is that why they were asking about it? Or?
No, it was. I don't believe it was on the issue of legislation. It was. What would it come up under? Were you at that meeting,
I was at
Lynn?
that meeting.
Do you recall?
I believe it.
I didn't bring my
sure
state
either,
card.
but I might have been a discussion of trying to get an automated ballot duplication process. It might have fallen under that or under legislation. I'm not sure which, but it was definitely that they had never received any indication that it was a burden to the local boards.
I find that questionable, just because I think we've been talking about this. Maybe we didn't send something in writing that said this is a burden to us, but I'm pretty sure that they've heard from us.
I'm at most state board meetings, so I don't think we've spoken to them about it.
Yes, you have.
I did go back and find, and now of course I don't remember which month it was, but I did find the minutes of the state board meeting where Jessica and I went and spoke, and it was, we were there, I forget what the direct purpose of our presence there was. That's right, it was the federal write-in ballots. But there was some extended Q&A about this topic as well, and so it was reflected in the minutes and in the Q&A. We had discussed the costs and burdens of this, but right, our
when was that?
immediate reason for being there
When
was
was
in
it?
January.
I think it was January 2017 is where it's reflected in the minutes,
And that was
which
all.
is why
Yeah.
the state board allowed the state board staff to go forward with the potential contract to move forward with this Runbeck's automated system, which was part of what led up to there. So it is correct that the state board has heard from Montgomery County. And I believe that the informal discussions that happened after the state board meeting, in which I know you have talked to board members, you have mentioned it.
I have too.
In any case, can we send a letter now, officially from our board, detailing dot points of the burden?
Yeah, Kevin, can you draft a letter, but using, the raw data, like how many people we use, how long it takes, how many ballots?
I'd like to
Well,
make that-
and if those figures are available, and I think they are, what is the cost per ballot duplicated?
We do have that.
Versus, electronic versus, or hand duplicated versus machine scanned.
That calculation was done, so.
And could we get, I'd like that in a form of a motion, and I'd like it sent within 2 weeks.
Well, actually, I think what Ms. Garland is pointing out is
No.
that
It has to be in by Thursday.
We want to do more than then I think
We
within
should
2
send it out
days.
tomorrow.
Can you?
Send it
All
tomorrow.
right, I amend mine to say within 2 days.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I second.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, the motion is to send a letter with the facts.
With the facts,
Specific burden.
Okay.
as it pertains to Montgomery County.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed? Kevin, can you do that? Lynn, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Margaret, election director report.
Okay, just for the record, I meant to say this, the agenda was posted on March 8th on the web as well as on our door, and I attended the election center meeting on dealing with security in San Antonio one day, February 28th. So that was in the meeting I attended. On personnel, we have been very busy bringing people on board to support recruiting and training, and so I'm going to let Allison add that.
We started our Train the Trainer program last Monday. I know Lisa has been working diligently to try to process all manner of temporary employee hires. So, actually, Lisa's probably in a better position. Is there anything to report status-wise?
Other than we've probably
Bunch of
brought in
people.
about 30, 31 personnel in to fill positions as a trainer, recruiter, and a couple of IT and operations warehouse.
And these temporaries are to do what? They're train the trainers?
They're coming in as trainers,
They're coming in as trainers
Most of them.
recruiters.
to conduct the training?
Yeah, majority of them are trainers coming
How
in to
many
conduct the
did
training.
you say?
Overall, about 31.
And do we expect to hire that many, or that's just the number of applicants?
That's
No.
how many we're hiring.
Yeah, those are just.
Overall, we hire 80-some.
We
people.
will be.
Oh, okay, so that's what my next question was, how does this
This is like the first
map
round
with
of these
it?
individuals coming in. We'll have several coming in for absentee and IT and outreach and other positions to fill.
The warehouse.
When does the training start, the date on
The training really.
election
starts,
director training, right? For
it
election
really-
Judge training.
Yeah.
Election judge training really starts April 2nd. We have what I call the demonstration training classes. It's beginning next week. So the various trainers get up, they present, they're reviewed for the manner of their presentation and accuracy, and it's a lot of role playing. Right now, they came on board and they're learning the equipment, they're learning the various processes and procedures. I think a third of them are returning judges, returning trainers. I recognized when I've gone down there twice.
I would say a third, yes.
Yeah, about a third are returning. A lot of the new ones, I should say that. Some of the new ones are election judges that have agreed to come on as trainers.
The minutes from the January meeting have the schedule for training in them and which weeks we're going to be. I'm looking sideways at my computer to read them, but if you go back to the minutes of the January meeting, you see which weeks we will be off-site at which locations. So if you want to kind of delve into the detail on that.
Okay, no, I was just curious as to how quickly it was starting in terms of, and where we were with the trainers. It's starting soon.
Yes. All right, budget, it went out in the packet. Margie, can you just review the budget issues?
If you have any questions on anything, I'll be happy to answer them. We've spent 33.53% of our budget in the first 8 months of the fiscal year. You'll note that I did make the changes on the spreadsheet as directed at last month's meeting, moving funds to advertising to show now a FY18 approved balance of 28,257 in that line item.
I'm sorry, where is
Oh, I'm sorry, can you
Right.
repeat that, Mark?
Oh, okay.
The advertising.
Right, yes,
Oh.
thank you.
The extra money that we
Yes,
voted.
that we voted last time.
Yeah.
Margie, do you think that number will change if the county council ultimately grants what County Executive Leggett has recommended with additional money?
Well, keep in mind that's for FY19, so that
Oh,
would be
right.
reflected for next fiscal year numbers.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, State Board of Elections.
Voter registration.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jessica, I apologize.
No.
We're working on the ERIC, something I say often. Just the total count of voters, 725,392. Of that, 644,279 are active, 81,113 are inactive.
That's a lot of inactive voters.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
But it's right after a presidential, so that's kind of to be expected.
Right.
State Board of Elections, there was a presentation by the Bipartisan Policy Center requesting to participate, the local boards to participate in wait times. We did that in 2016. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with Allison to see if we want to do it again. I would recommend it. LBEs are, the direction from the State Board of Elections is that from this point forward, the local boards of elections are to report non-citizens to SBE for referral to the state prosecutor. The ERIC update, as Jessica White mentioned, we're in the process of processing that list. The national voter registration deadline is March 28th, 2018, and this has to do with cancellations that should be completed. So I'm going to let Jessica White explain that, because I know it's a concern as it relates to the lawsuit.
So, and I brought kind of a copy of NVRA, which just states that a state shall complete no later than 90 days prior to the date of the primary or general election for federal office any program, the purpose of which is to systematically remove the names of ineligible voters from its official list of eligible voters. So basically our process of inactivating voters has to cease at the end of March, because we'll be in the 90 days prior to. We still
But
do
there
get,
are exceptions.
There are exceptions, of course, if anybody's deceased, if anybody moves out of state, anything like that. And we do still receive the ERIC reports. We still do go through and verify the information. We just can't inactivate any voters.
When you say, but you mean inactivate as opposed to once they've gone through the inactive process, you can actually remove them from the rolls, but you're talking about actually placing them on inactive status.
That's correct.
Even dead people?
No, dead people, if we have from a trusted, reliable source, otherwise we go through our normal process.
Okay.
Yeah, deceased, this is just a process of going through and inactivating to ultimately cancel somebody. And that's the direction of the state board, is that the 90 days before was maintenance activities such, used to inactivate my seat.
All right. We were informed that the State Board of Election is fielding questions regarding petitions for candidates and issues, and we should expect those items coming on July of 2018. They did not identify the issues, and nor did they identify the candidates. Poll book, the electronic poll book has one more round of software updates. Testing is going to be taking place this week, and hopefully we'll have a finalized poll book. Yes.
Margaret, a question about poll books. Are we using the existing poll books, or I'm trying to remember, was a decision made to purchase a new unit?
The State Board has made a decision to move forward to replace the ones we currently have, which we received in 2006, but we are currently using the poll books that we've had since 2006, but the software has been updated and patches are being added. In fact, the latest this week is another patch to the poll book, and hopefully it'll function as programmed.
All right, so they're gonna buy the new ones, but not the ones they used in whatever it was, Kent and Cecil County, that malfunctioned. It's something different than those, or did they buy the malfunctioning?
Well,
yes, in essence,
I can't give you the answer to that question. I asked that question at the directors meeting, and it was just kind of gone over. The State Board has said that we should plan on using the electronic poll books for this year.
All year for both elections?
Yes.
The old ones?
Yes. The ones we currently have.
Right. Did they give a sense, if they're buying new ones, as to when that would be?
Well, realistically, I mean, if we could do it the nightmare way that they did it the last time and have everything delivered, I should ask Sherry 5 days before the election. But I would hope that if they were going to go forward with purchasing the poll book, that they would have that decision made in very latest February, March, and then begin the process of bringing them in to doing the acceptance testing at the state warehouse, and then doing logic and accuracy, and then coming here.
You mean February, March of 19 for the 20 election?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can assure ourselves besides Marion and me making ourselves more obnoxious at the state meeting than we already do, of assuring that we don't get those that were the malfunctioning.
I'm not aware of the Cecil County thing. Can you explain that, Jackie? What was the issue there?
The issue is they had a new poll book.
Right.
And they used, there were two counties, and I don't know why Cecil and Kent come to mind, I know there were smaller counties, that they used them for some local elections, and they malfunctioned.
Were they manufactured by ES&S? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. Allison,
I'm not sure that they would characterize it as a malfunction. I think it was more a question of the state having some design specifications that they wanted to have ES&S provide something different. But honestly, I'm not clear on
I think the word they used was that it failed.
It failed the test.
So I mean, you know, so they're not usable in their
malfunction type word.
But
different people spin it different ways. So
my concern is using these old ones. I mean, we had a number of problems at early voting last time.
Where, believe me, Allison and I
were they all
familiar with that problem. There are processes being put in place to ensure that that will not happen again. But I mean, the thing about Montgomery County is that until you have the actual volume coming through, it's really not easy to simulate the volume that we would see. Even in the small tests that we've done and participated in, I mean, when you see 10,000 people coming through, I mean, that's a test. And for whatever reason, the state board does not do, what's the word I want to use, a load test on these poll books, like they used to in the good old days when you had mainframes.
I mean, these things are more than 10 years old. They don't have enough RAM for what we need of them.
But we've been testing them.
They run out of RAM.
Oh, yeah.
Midday in Silver Spring, and we just have to reboot them if there's a RAM.
Yeah.
Janet, do you want to add anything to this? Because you're IT.
No.
I've described it as well as it is.
We'll be testing tomorrow.
So what does the software update allegedly do?
What is that latest one?
We have it. It came today. We're actually testing it tomorrow and Wednesday.
Okay. I can't remember what Brandon told us what we're testing for. It's one tiny little thing.
As far as the election judges are concerned, the only real substantive difference is supposed to be the drop down for the change in the law for voters who change their address at early voting, not needing to provide proof of residence. I think there's some sort of more back-end tweaks in how they do some of the same-day registration.
I mean, is it going to do anything for any of the problems that we've had, or is it just to update like you said, updating the law?
It's not going to address the problems we've had because Allison's correct.
They're not software problems.
I mean, there's only so much memory in those things.
Right.
I mean, in those days, 32 meg was great. You know? Just the other day, I was buying 128 and thinking that wasn't big enough. So.
How many of us are using computers for that old?
Right.
You know, come on.
I'm not.
Is there any chance we can get a heads up after you do the test, just informal email about how well it did?
Sure.
Maura, how many do we have in reserve?
We have a little over 1,000 poll books, and we'll be deploying 940-ish. And that balance will be our reserve.
Okay.
All right. Ballots are in development. Montgomery County has 77 ballot styles for the primary. I do not know at this time for certain how many pages or cards the Democratic ballot has. It's going to be an 8.5 by 17-inch ballot.
Is that the usual size?
Yeah, that's
okay.
The last election, yes, it was the usual size.
Okay.
The ballots will have to be married to one another, so it's not going to be like the last election where the second card was always issues. We'll have very specific legislative districts on that second card, so the ballots need to be married.
But will all the names for a particular race?
I have not seen that. I know that they're working on it. but as soon as we get it, I will let you know.
Who designs it?
The state board is working on the ballot layout now.
When you say married, you don't
gonna
mean
be a nightmare.
attached, you mean
You know married?
two will have to be put together,
gonna be a
Yes,
nightmare.
but not
correct.
attached. That's like most married.
Is it true they have to make sure the font is large enough for people who are visually impaired to see it?
Well, we have magnifying glass at all, magnifying sheets. I think we might, yeah, magnifying sheets.
Now, they get posted for candidate review, right?
Yes, they will get posted as in accordance to law.
Right.
When is that?
As soon as we start, once we get through the first round of proofing, I think, here, I can
Yeah,
tell
they
you the
post it in
exact
the window,
date.
I remember.
Monday.
Where, here?
Yeah, they post them on the windows.
It doesn't go on the website?
I'm not sure.
That's a good question.
I used to see it on the...
Yeah, why not on the
Yeah.
website as well?
Well,
Yeah.
the
Who's gonna drive
law
out here and
vote? Yeah,
says
sure.
the display of ballots must occur no later than May 3rd. I anticipate that we will be doing ballot display probably April 2nd, April 3rd. April.
And do we post it also on our website?
We have a link to the state board's website.
But the state board posts them on theirs.
So as soon as the state has theirs up, which is ours,
Right.
we'll put it on our website.
And do we or the state contact the candidates to let them know that it's there?
Send an email blast out
Okay.
to all the candidates telling them that the name will appear on the ballot. Please review it. Please make sure it's spelled correctly, so that they're supposed to look at both the English and the Spanish.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, the state board went to the Maryland Association of County Officials to request that the county support the new security measures. What that means is that there are counties in the state that are reluctant to spend any funds in the Board of Elections, and they wanted to make sure that after the Department of Homeland Security did a assessment and identified specific needs. So, as I understand it, one county needed increased cybersecurity that they would support. The county would agree to pay for that. Dovetailing directly on that, I did meet with the Homeland Security folks when I was in San Antonio. We have began the process of talking to Homeland Security and Montgomery County. Our department is funded by the county. We have to have the support of the county. And so we are including the Department of Technology Services and General Services to work with us and Homeland Security to make sure that so that they are part and party of the physical and technological security of this facility.
That's the federal Homeland Security of the state.
They do an assessment of our building and make
And
recommendations.
cybersecurity, yes.
And from what I understand, there's no cost for that either, from what I understand.
Well, that's true. There's no cost on that part.
Right, on the
but
assessment.
to implement
Right.
those, it's like, I think Cecil County, it was like 65 grand, which is pretty much.
Well, no, that's why it's a good idea to have the county on board when we go through the assessment.
That was my thought.
Excellent,
exactly.
yeah, good.
Since they're paying
We
the
don't
check,
know
they
the
write
money.
the check.
Yes.
Okay. So the meeting is in the process of being set up with all the various departments that we have to work with. There was the state board uses Google Chrome, and they told us that after a certain date, July 1st, I think, if the HTTP URL isn't a secure URL, then we won't be able to utilize it. Is that right?
As I understand it, what the state board is concerned that because the Chrome browser in particular is adopting some new symbols, making it look scarier, if you will. If you go to just an HTTP site instead of an HTTPS site, they are going through and making all or more of their pages HTTPS. But there was some pretty significant pushback from other counties saying, that's fine if the state wants to do that, but it's still not really changing the security, of our pages, and you've got lots and lots and lots of pages out there that you're not even providing any information on them. So I mean, it's not like we're doing online voter registration on our website. We just have static information. It's HTTP. If you get a warning from Chrome saying that your information, this is not a secure page, well, it's no more or less secure than it ever was. It's just information. You're not giving us any information. So there was a dialogue about that, but I feel like they were just sort of notifying us that they were acting based on that heightened level of concern that nobody wants to go to a Board of Elections page and see a pop-up that says, whoa, 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 what's not secure? But whether, the county is going to have all of our website, transition to HTTPS, I don't know that that's realistic to expect of any of the counties.
I don't know. That's part of our discussion. The absentee contract with ES&S was not discussed, much to my dismay. And I was told that if I have any questions, I should put them in writing. And I was pretty much brushed off.
Margaret, do you want to elaborate on that or not?
No, I basically raised my hand and asked why on the agenda why we were not being told about the new ES&S absentee contract, and when we would get a presentation, and I was told to put my questions into writing. So
can we put it in writing with you?
Yeah.
I mean, because it sounds like that's a pretty significant. I mean,
well,
we spent a lot of time talking about and dealing with absentee ballots. I would think that would be a big deal.
Yeah, I thought it was a big deal.
But I don't think it's just for us. Other people don't have a problem, right?
What do you mean?
25% of the absentees statewide are voted here in Montgomery County.
How many?
25% statewide. Yeah, it's a big deal to us because we have to process that.
This is the contract that used to be with Runback. Okay.
Now,
and this will be the first time it's with the ES&S.
That's correct.
So it's already been awarded?
Yes, it's already awarded.
But they haven't told you about what it's going to say?
The only thing that they have told me, which came in this morning while I was trying to get ready for this meeting, is they sent me a copy of our envelope, our absentee return envelope. And so I sent it to Bobby, Jessica, and Michelle, and asked them to give me comments on it. And then I sent an email to the state saying, where's the Spanish? As I always do.
Right.
So I have not had an opportunity. I just, we had this board meeting, so I haven't gotten a response.
Well, how can we help?
Well, let me sit down with Jessica and Michelle and Bobby, and we'll put together some questions, and I'll shoot it off to Kevin, and then he can shoot it out to you guys. Okay?
I had a sidebar with Nikki afterwards about the request to have the vendor come speak to the Montgomery County Board. And, the answer basically was that it's not budgeted in the state's contract for them to have a representative come and visit all of the local boards.
Not all, just us.
And that it would be difficult for them to make arrangements for the vendor to come speak to our board, but our board only, and not also give that same.
So in addition to
that, we sent out an invitation.
So in addition to that, they tell our director that she can't ask any questions either. That doesn't sound right.
But could we host their representative and invite representatives from the other central committees, and that would be then everybody would be able to have a representative?
I think their answer would be that opportunity would have been to talk to them at Mayo, and that whatever our concerns are, we should just put in writing.
How do we know what our concerns are if we don't know how the system's going to work?
Were they demonstrating it at Mayo?
No,
Runback was there. They had a table.
No, they
You
didn't.
mean the location?
They didn't do anything.
Yes, ES&S was there. They had a table.
I'm not real sure how you express your concerns about something you don't know how they're going to do it.
What they're talking about.
Where they're going to go ahead and how they're going to mail things out, how they're going to process
Right.
things, how they're going to do anything. How would you know what your concerns
But
are?
at the moment, our concern is that we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that's our concern. And that we need to, because like you say, 25% of the votes are ours. We spend an enormous amount of time and resources dealing with the absentees. We've had lots of problems in the past with the previous contractor. It seems like we have a pretty good case to make that we have concerns with it as a general subject. We just don't know any of the specifics yet.
In order to meet Nikki's concern, I'll repeat, what do you think about inviting, through Nikki or however, we have the ES&S people to address us and invite representatives from the rest of the state central committees to
You
join
don't mean
us?
central committees, you mean
You mean the boards of elections? But
That's what I
yeah, but I think what Nikki is saying to
Thank
Margaret
you, Mary. I'm sorry. Thank you.
is that someone has to pay for ES&S's time, and the state is not
Yeah.
willing to do that.
But why can't we just have a conference call? Put it on our agenda for ES&S to go ahead and call in. They don't have to come in from Nebraska. They can call in.
Okay, that's
And
good.
give a presentation about how they're going to do it and what the process will be, and then you all could ask them questions.
Skype and
That can't be expensive.
You probably still need the state to pay it. I mean, you can say, give us half an
I
hour.
bet you ES&S would be happy to do it if the state were willing to do it.
I would think they would have, it would be extraordinary PR for them to be responsive to people's questions about their contract.
They don't need PR because they have a state board.
Margaret, can you see if that's feasible?
Just
Certainly, I'd love to. All right.
And whatever else we can do to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we will put together some questions. SBE has requested the AG's office to provide an opinion based on law regarding guns in the polling place. So that really was more of it was a smaller county that asked that question, but I just thought you guys would want to know.
Do we know whose guns we're referring to at this point? We're talking about
Both.
Voters.
Both.
I
And-
assume
and
voters
personnel.
and judges.
Oh,
Concealed carry
no.
for some of the judges, yeah. Both.
No.
So,
If
and then
you have a license, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you can get a license.
But from what I understand, there's no law preventing someone with a gun, with a permit, to vote.
Sure,
that's true.
right? You can
Correct.
just come with a gun. Imagine that.
When I was in Nebraska
Right.
and they had elections in November, it's not unusual for pheasant season, or
Yeah.
deer, elk, all coming open at the same day, and they'd come in with their rifle because they didn't want to leave it in their pickup truck.
I got you.
Okay, that's from the real. I didn't grow up in that part of Nebraska. All right. SBE discussed legislation related to the manual audits. That's House Bill 1278, which leads into Allison.
So the bills that I sat and went through today is the crossover deadline, so I just went through to see where we stand so far with bills that have passed one chamber or the other. The automatic registration bill passed the Senate, and that's the bill to basically take the agencies that currently have to provide you with the option to register to vote and to change that from do you want to register to we're going to register you unless you opt out and give people the opportunity to opt out. So that's
Sorry.
passed the Senate.
Allison, I'm sorry, do you have Senate Bill?
Senate Bill 1048 and the companion bill is House Bill 152. I'll come back to one other bill that's passed the Senate in just a
Does
minute.
that bill, say anything about identification or verification of that the person is real, a citizen?
It does not change our current procedures for how we take that information.
Okay.
The constitutional amendment to let the General Assembly provide by law for same-day registration has passed the House. That's House Bill 532. The companion bill is Senate Bill 594. There is a cybersecurity incident mandatory reporting bill that just passed the House on Friday. It requires us to notify the State Board, the Governor, the Speaker, and the Senate President of any security violations or violations of the acceptable use of our election systems. It also has the language that would strengthen the ID requirement for the paper absentee ballot application so that you have to provide that same, by regulation, the State Board has made it the issuance date of your license. But it requires that to be on the paper absentee ballot application in addition to just in the Oliver system. And that also has the language that there's a checkbox where voters affirm that if they request a web delivery ballot, that their ballot will be duplicated, and that if they choose to use the online marking system, their choices could be viewed by others without their knowledge. It's a checkbox that you have to say that you affirm, you recognize this
Allison, what was
information.
the first part you said about that bill? There was something about ID, was it, or no?
Right now, if you request a ballot at all through the online voter registration system, you have to provide the same information you provide on the paper absentee ballot application, but you also have to provide the issuance date of your driver's license number, and then the issuance date. This adds the issuance date for all forms of a request for an absentee ballot, not just for if you request it through the online system.
Or another state ID number?
Just only vote.
No.
No, you have to have a Maryland license. We can't accept a non-state license.
No, another Maryland ID number.
Right.
If you
can
don't
use
drive.
Just state ID,
Yeah.
yes. Or a learner's permit.
Yeah.
Those are the only forms, though.
No.
So not
Social Security.
student ID.
There's a whole.
There is a whole. Okay.
There's also a post-election tabulation audit bill that we talked about at the last meeting that passed the House unanimously on Friday. This is the compromise bill. It requires for every election the electronic ballot image audit that we do right now through Clear Ballot as the vendor. It requires that after every election, and then after every general election, it requires it has a formula procedure for a hand tally of votes. It is not a pre-certification requirement. We would have up to 120 days after the election to do that, and that just passed the House as well.
Allison, I'm sorry.
I didn't write down the bill numbers.
Okay.
I can provide that information
The
to you later.
House
for the
bill
minutes, Lisa.
for the audits is House Bill 1278.
Yeah. And the other bill, I have to apologize that I did not realize this had already passed the Senate, is Senate Bill 333. I just realized that this morning going through it. It did pass the Senate as amended. This is now the language that basically clarifies our current procedures for handling those situations where a voter casts both an absentee ballot and a provisional ballot. As you'll remember, this is a bill that initially said that we would count the provisional in those cases. We testified saying that we wanted to amend that to count the absentee. Senator Simon Ayer didn't want to go that far, didn't really want to count the provisional in those cases either. So as it passed the Senate, it basically just clarifies what we currently do.
Would you throw them both out?
Would just throw them both out.
Yeah.
That bill is actually up for a hearing in the Senate, in the House tomorrow. So we had testified on that. On the other chamber, I don't know if we want to scramble and testify tomorrow. I had not realized it was up for hearing.
In the snow.
In the House. Mayo is opposed to the bill outright. They just want to kill it.
Which one is
Senate Bill 333.
333.
So I'm just laying that on the table.
Well, it basically doesn't change anything, though, does
No,
it?
it doesn't
Well,
change anything.
what it does is it moves what was a regulatory
Into
process
law.
into law.
Makes it harder for us
Makes
to
it
get it to
worse.
be changed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not good.
Killing
So
it
I don't
sounds
know if
appealing.
Yeah.
Anybody has the fire in their belly, they want to go up and testify, or if you want to continue. Because we talked about trying to amend the bill in the House at one point.
Just shoot me.
I have to confess that I have not. My attention has been in other issues, and I have not been working this issue at all.
You mean the one on 333?
Correct. Yeah, the count the absentee position. So, right now, we're not doing anything tomorrow. We're not, we're not testifying unless anybody strongly feels that we need to scramble and do that.
Could we submit something for the record?
We could do whatever we want. It's tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Oh.
But you had testimony
We could submit something really short.
The Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Right?
Yes, we did. We could reformulate that if we wanted to.
And that was because we wanted to be able to open the absentee ballots early.
Right.
We wanted to add to that bill.
Because this would allow that or no?
No,
Right.
and it doesn't say anything about it at all.
So the hearing tomorrow is in another
House.
committee? Is it?
We really don't like how they've amended this. So
It's taken away a lot of the board's flexibility.
So if you want to, wave the flag and push the, we really want to count the absentees, then, we would have an opportunity to do that tomorrow if we want to go testify.
But the Senate didn't do it.
No.
So
Right.
it sounds like we may even have to wave the flag just to say, leave this up to the boards and not legislation.
That we're just against
for us to be able to count one of the ballots when people vote absentee and provisional.
And we took no position on the bill after Senator Simoneau amended it. So right now, we're in a posture of no position. So it would merely be if we were to be, continuing to push our, we really want to count the absentee.
Right, but we also took a
focused
position
on
with the
fraud.
state board about counting
Yeah.
The absentee.
the absentee, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He was very concerned about the fraud issues. Senator Simoneau.
That's up to you all. I mean, I'll do whatever the board directs.
Well, if it hasn't passed the Senate.
It passed the Senate.
It passed the Senate without the amendment.
Right,
No.
right.
It passed the Senate as amended.
No, but it passed, but
Without our amendment.
without our amendment.
In other words,
Right.
it did the same.
No, they
threw them both out.
amended it, making it
Making it
work.
work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it sounds like it's something that we might oppose.
Yeah, it does to me too. I
Yeah.
wonder, can we just, how is it done? Can we vote here today to oppose the bill and just send a email to the entire committee saying we oppose the bill? How do we, what would be the procedure?
Well, you'd want some of the things submitted so that it's part of the committee hearing record.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you want
they
to
always-
oppose it, or do you want
they always
to
want a paper to
seek
give-
amendments to it to count the absentee? Do you want to kill it, or do you want to seek amendments to count the absentee?
My theory right now would be to kill it so that maybe we could come back with something we like better next year.
Because it is the same language that we told Senator Simoneau we were taking no position on.
I mean, take a position that it
at
shouldn't
the
be
Senate
law.
passage.
Just keep it.
Well, we told him we have no position on whether he codifies throwing both ballots out when there's a provisional and an absentee. Did we take that position here?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, the Senate made it
No,
worse.
his original bill, you will recall, was he wanted to count the provisional if
Correct.
there were both.
Right.
We took the position we wanted to count the
Yes,
absentee.
And
Right.
So now they both get thrown
Right,
out.
but
And
now,
now-
but now they
but
both
that's
get thrown
when
out,
we
which
started.
is the worst of all worlds.
Right. Right.
So what you could do is put together a very simple letter. If we get it to the county lobbyist by 10:30 tomorrow morning, saying that we oppose the bill in its current form and that we would advocate being able to open the absentee ballots, really simple, and then they could get it over to the committee clerk and it would be part of the record.
That's a
Are,
good
are you
idea.
saying open the absentee
Yeah.
ballots? Are you talking about opening it
Yeah.
early, or are you talking about
No,
when
just
when both are cast?
when
Just-
both are cast. At this point,
Right.
getting early is
I,
not
I,
happening.
I agree. It's,
Right.
the
Yeah.
Senate, the
It's not
Senate didn't
happening.
do it. It's not happening.
Right.
I totally agree. That's why I was. That's
So
why.
is
I
that
was.
Simpler the better, but I think opposition, so it's not codified, is better for us for our future needs.
Or we could go testify just for information and give them context.
Well, or we
on
can
everybody's
say
position on this.
we propose the amendment like Margaret suggested,
Yeah.
and if it's not adopted, we are against the legislation.
Whatever you all
So
want
what Margaret suggests is
I
a
mean-
good idea. Let them, the lobbyists do the
I
job.
mean, would we have someone to go and testify? Is there a staff person that can do it?
Uh,
I think what they do
This
is
is-
they give them something in writing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but bring
Talk
a.
about
We
two
can do
sentences
either.
here.
Yeah.
yeah, we.
I mean, it's, if not, it's late notice. I mean.
It is very late notice,
I
and
know.
I
And
have,
bad weather.
Okay.
yeah, in bad weather. I would prefer to just send a letter and ask that the, bill be amended to allow us to count the absentee or whatever we had before. And if that cannot be accomplished, then we propose the bill as it's currently.
I move that we send.
That's good.
What she just said.
What she said.
I second.
Yeah, right.
Allison, you know the jargon. Can you put something together?
We'll repackage what we've testified to before into a letter tonight.
And this, just what Margaret said, the simpler the better.
Yeah. 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about early opening of, 'cause that's,
No.
that's
It's
old, that's
just-
old news.
Exactly.
Right.
Dead news.
Yeah, okay.
That.
And then
No longer news.
what is the process then? I mean, that goes into a packet that each member has, is
Yeah.
that?
If
They
we
distribute
did
it by
on-
11, I think, or
Yeah,
something.
it's
Is it-
11 or
Okay.
12.
Go
When
ahead.
they get to the
So is there a
page.
second?
Right.
Oh, I second.
Oh, David, I think
We
David
need to
will
David
second
already
that.
seconded.
Any further
Yeah.
discussion?
If she wants it, it's fine.
Well, let me know what's going to go into record.
If you want to second it, it's fine.
I mean, do we
No, he already had.
do we need a motion?
I
We
don't
do,
know.
it's on the
The
table.
motion-
Okay, then I
yeah,
second it.
no,
Okay,
David
that's fine.
seconded
Let
it
her
before
second.
you-
Uh,
Okay,
no-
David seconds. That's
No,
fine, David.
no, he seconded.
That's
Okay.
all right.
No, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Allison, so can you, with your legislative experience, do that?
She's sitting there doing it right now.
I can stay a little bit after the meeting today to, Allison, to work with you on it if you want.
I could stay too, if that helps.
That's good.
The state board did, oh, no, Kevin, sorry.
When we were at Mayo last week, we attended I attended the meeting along with Alan, David, and Alex were there for the canvassing of ballots, and I had raised the question of what I view to be a conflict between 11302, which says that a local board shall not open an envelope of an absentee ballot prior to 8 a.m. on the Wednesday following the election, with the COMAR provisions that say that we're not allowed to process any ballots before 10 o'clock on the Thursday following the general election, or following the election. And Nikki indicated that the state board staff was aware of Montgomery County's interest in opening ballots early, and that they were open to discussions about maybe that happening.
Before the election?
But, no, by a day.
Yeah, by a day.
By a day.
By a
By
day.
the
But,
state.
you know,
Okay.
In 2 hours.
We'll take baby steps here. I'd like to take her up on that invitation and request that the board authorize a letter go to the state board indicating that the statute provides that the board staff can begin processing ballots at 8 o'clock on the Wednesday following the election, and that we believe the COMAR provisions that are currently in place do not comply with the plain language of 11302.
Nikki Charleston's position was that she didn't see that they were inconsistent, because was she arguing that the statute said it shall not be done sort of before this time, but it didn't preclude a regulation saying it shall be done at this time?
Correct.
She also was suggesting that there was some kind of necessary preparatory work on Wednesday before Thursday that wouldn't be able to be done if we do it this way, and I'm not sure.
She's talking
you know.
about the,
We're talking about an E40 report.
yeah, she's talking about the duplicate voters.
Which is a report they give us.
So what happens is the night of the election, the thousands of little cars that you see here are returning their poll books, and we pull the memory card out of there, and we upload that information and send it via secure net to the State Board of Elections. And then what happens is that file is bounced against the Maryland voter registration file. That reflects everyone who's voted absentee or election day. And then that's where we get the initial report that says maybe somebody voted an absentee and showed up at the polls and they voted provisional. It's anything, most probably aside from the nursing home issue, the next biggest problem we have is election judges will process in a voter and then the voter will say, oh, by the way, I moved. So rather than canceling that voter authority card, they go ahead and then issue a provisional voter authority card. So we have the appearances of someone voting twice. So what we have to do, and I say we, actually the voter registration staff, as well as the warehouse staff, the IT staff, are going down and correcting the record. So if we have a provisional ballot that's complete and we have this voter authority card that appears to be a regular voter, then we would, of course, look at the election judge log and see if there's, that this was an error, or we call the election judge to reconcile everything. Because no matter how often we make them practice canceling the regular vote, then going to provisional, it just sometimes they just don't get it.
Is there anything that, in Kevin's proposal, that would prevent that from happening?
Well, what we would like to do is to get all of the ballots in order, slice them open that are timely. So all the ballots that are received through the last day of early voting, and just start getting that process, even if we don't start scanning them until Thursday at 10 a.m., holding them back as long as we could.
So just be utilizing that time.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that this is always going to be, this process is never going to be advanced until they move away from this fact that you can't do anything until you have the E40 report. We're never going to get to a point where they can start doing this in advance of the Thursday after the election. And this is just one way to make them start thinking about pushing that deadline back. My position is, I don't disagree with Nikki that it's not inconsistent. My position, though, is that they have COMAR regulation that substantially, that supplants what is the legislative intent in the statute, which is to allow the staff to begin processing the ballots on the Wednesday after the election. And so now the state board has, through COMAR, pushed that deadline back when the statute clearly says something different.
Jessica had her hand up.
Well,
Jessica, yeah.
my only comment was going to be, this goes back to not counting the absentee. If we counted the absentee ballot, instead of rejecting both, this would be a non-issue.
Yeah.
Because there's no research to do for double voting, we're always going to count the absentee, reject the provisional. Then we would never risk.
Oh, I see. If the provisional comes up, you throw it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But because we have to, if there is a provisional, we have to wait till we can dig through and figure it out if it was legitimately or if it was an error.
That's what the E40 report is all about?
Well, it's multi-stage, but that's the issue with the
It's all
starting of the
potential
canvassing.
double voters.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the big issue that came up when we presented that testimony in the Senate, was the senators' belief that there are people voting someone's absentee ballot.
Right.
Which is
in
not
a fraudulent way.
And that is not something we receive. The volume of phone calls one would think you would receive if people got to go to the polls, they already received a ballot. We're not getting an influx of those calls, other than people who got one from a candidate's table and didn't realize that's what they were signing up for.
We need to research all of these anomalies anyway, but the only reason you have to wait to start opening those absentee ballots is just because you might reject it if, for this hypothetical situation where they also voted the provisional. If you just counted the absentee and we rejected the provisional, you wouldn't need to wait. We'd still do the work, we'd still do the research, but you wouldn't need to wait to do the exception.
And I just want to remind you, 49 other states are counting those absentee ballots.
Right.
If any of you stayed up last Tuesday.
Yeah, I know, it was ridiculous.
Right. Wolf Blitzer, I couldn't believe it. I was in shock.
Go count them, and they went and counted them.
Two election directors, after he badgered them long enough, went and counted the absentee ballots. I was like,
I'm sure they didn't have as many as we do.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, I love that fact that they were counting them that night.
And so, I mean,
I couldn't believe
we're
it.
the only state in the nation that does this, and it's just, it doesn't make any sense.
When you say put them in order and slice them, it'd be great to have them sliced open. I hate doing that. What do you mean put them in order?
Well, we
By
put them
precinct.
in the order, well, we don't do it by precinct anymore.
Okay.
We do it by congressional district. That's about as narrow as we can get with this new system.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
And what, as far as I'm concerned, we could go one step more and start lay them all out, flatten them, so that the next day they could zoom through the high-speed scanner. But I may be pushing my luck with the state board on that.
So your letter, Kevin, is just to start the conversation?
Right.
Sounds good to me.
But we want to do it in June, right?
It'll be a quick conversation.
Or
November.
Yeah.
We couldn't
At
do it in
least.
June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have a much higher.
Well,
It'd be great to do it in June.
Once again,
Yeah, it'd
Mr.
be nice,
President,
but
I make a
probably more
motion
realistic.
that we send a letter to the state board stating our,
Do we need a motion on this, or?
I would suggest it would be, yeah.
Okay.
okay, and so I so move.
Second?
Kevin, second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
Within 2 weeks, can I add that to it now?
And the only other thing I have is Judicial Watch is still hanging out there.
The motion to dismiss is still pending?
Yeah, still there.
It was fully briefed as of December or November?
I think November.
Yeah.
Have they added Alan as a defendant yet?
Well, we're pushing for that, right, Mr. President?
Do we have any?
Only after last night's basketball game.
Oh, yes, what you did to my bracket. That was the worst. Along with Arizona, I hit both of them with the
They
fire.
generally issue their decisions by the end of the term. So they should have something fairly soon.
Hopefully they won't redistrict Maryland.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, old business. Lisa sent out a calendar for you. Did anyone have any questions?
Has it changed since the last one?
No.
The only
The one
difference
thing-
is I think that next month the board will be sworn in as the Board of Canvassers. So if you're going to arrive at 2 o'clock.
In April or in May?
April.
Oh, so that's not on. That's not on.
It's
Yeah,
still
this
the
is-
same one we got last month.
Yeah, this one.
It is, the only change is that if you guys can arrive,
2 o'clock, April 16th.
yes.
And
be
not.
sworn in.
And then 2:30 on the 21st of May.
Yes,
Okay.
So April 16th, you want us at 2 p.m.?
yes,
Yes.
please.
I have an issue, I think, for old business. Should I have said that in the beginning of the meeting somewhere?
About the swearing? Oh, that. Go ahead. Is this old or new?
Maybe it's new
I think
business.
it's new.
Are we done with the calendar?
It's new business.
No, I mean, is there any comments on the calendar?
So you're saying you want to start it, or we need to be here at 2 p.m. on April 16th so we can get sworn in as the Board of Canvassers?
Yes, the
We can do
meeting
that,
will still start at 2:30
For what?
for the
That's when they're
public.
swearing in the Board of Canvassers.
Yes.
You'll be
Yeah.
here for that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why April, though, and
I
not
thought you were.
May?
We're trying to accommodate board
Oh,
members.
but this is when they get sworn in.
Okay.
so. Okay, good.
Oh, right.
Good. So April 16th, 2 p.m. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Did you have something you?
And Margie's we're gonna put together a calendar we do each year with who's when, what.
Yes.
Okay.
With the routes and all that, and who goes
I
where.
think he's meaning a Canvas attendance calendar, is that what you're
The
saying?
Canvas calendar? Oh, okay.
And we need how many here at once? 4? 2?
4.
And only one member from.
You need to have one member from each party.
And 4.
4 total.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to new business.
Okay.
I thought Mary Ann had a
Yeah, Mary Ann's got a.
old business.
I don't know whether it's old or new. It's regarding, I'm a recipient of, along with everybody in my apartment building and
All right.
people all over, what went out in terms of notifying folks about the change in their polling place.
I got one of those too
I,
last month.
to put it mildly, was very disappointed in it. And actually, I had a lot of people come up to me, because they know I'm Board of Elections, and saying, you know, does this mean I'm going to this different place now?
We're required by law to send out that voter notification form.
Are we doing something else,
Yes,
though?
we
Because
are.
I thought we discussed and
We
saw
are.
a mock-up
But-
of something.
I'm legally responsible for sending that form out.
Exactly.
Voter
It does not list their current polling place, which is what makes it really confusing. It just has the information about the new place,
Okay,
but
so
there's
Joanne?
nothing that says where they currently
Well,
vote.
the voter notification form that we're required to use would never say where your old polling place is. This is notifying the voter of where their new voting place is for the 2018 election cycle.
Why wouldn't we put
Yeah.
You used to vote here, now you're voting there.
Because this is not the.
That's what it used to say.
No,
So hold on.
No, it's not.
This is
Alright.
the BNC, it's the voter notification
This is the voter
card.
notification form. This is what we've always sent. Now, we are sending out another form that says, take a look at, I showed it last month, take a peek at your new polling place. That says, yes, the old place, why we had to move, and what your new location is. And it shows a picture of the entrance of that facility.
The new one.
The new one that will
You
go
showed
out.
it to us.
Yeah, we had seen that. That's
But
why I was
now
so
going-
surprised when I got
but
this.
I'm legally obligated to send this out.
Oh.
Where's the one?
This is the voter notification form. Now, if you're registering to vote for the first time, it's generally white. And it says, voter registration.
When are you required to send it?
Well, we were supposed to send it out in January, but we were having a lot of problems with our street file.
So we also have to send it anytime somebody registers to vote for the first time, changes address,
Right.
party, name,
Right.
anything.
And-
Make it a new
and-
presentation. It looks just like that.
I know it's in a bright color and that's great, but is there a reason why we put it in a white envelope so it can, mix in with all the other mail?
We put it in a white envelope. Doesn't it say important or something on the outside?
It says official document.
Okay, so when we used to send that document out just as a fourfold, Kevin was there when we had the discussion of notifying voters before, and they said it looked like junk mail.
Right.
So we now place it in an envelope, say it's an official document, so that we have a little bit of a chance that they might open it and see what it says.
I see.
That is our rationale.
So
Okay.
the next mailing will say it's because of school
Yeah.
construction?
Yeah, can someone call Chris and see if Ethne can bring it?
I have one.
Do you
And
have
also,
it?
Margaret, I think we want to point out, that's the template generated from the voter registration system that the state owns.
Yes.
So, and the polling place is in line with the voter name, so if you mail that out without an envelope, you risk it going to the polling place and not the voter.
So this is now, this replaces my old voter registration card.
For this cycle.
And then she gets a new one
And then
when
you'll
they go
get-
Yeah,
home.
right.
And that's
You go
because of
back
school
to the old.
construction.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah,
Don't
that's
forget
the
that.
state's-
So this is the
No,
draft.
it's because our chairman is.
So- This is,
We're going to take a survey at
let's
Mary
take a
Ann's
look-
apartment building to see what
Let's
they
take a
think.
peek at your new polling place, and then you open it up, and it shows Davis Library. And then inside is a whole.
I think that's really neat thing to send out. I mean,
Yeah.
Your polling place?
And
So
this
are
is
we.
gonna, this will go when?
Right.
This is going, I think in May. Late April,
When's it
early
say?
May. And then the sample ballot goes out late May, early June.
Where does it say because of
Right.
school?
The sample ballot goes out late May. I
There must
believe this
be.
is early May, yes.
Okay, so that the three, they say in marketing, if we get 3 hits, we have a pretty good chance of the memory, remembering where their new location is.
I'd like to ask
It doesn't say.
this question of everybody in the room. How many of you all know where your voter registration card is today, right now, that you can put your hands on it?
What? What happened?
In my wallet.
Really?
What was it?
Okay.
Stuck to the inside of my wallet.
Mine's in a lock box.
In a black box?
It's in a lock box
Oh,
with my original
important
Social
papers.
Security card.
I have mine too.
It's easy to get another one.
Margaret, I hate to be a broken record, but it doesn't say because of school construction. It doesn't say because of the schools we have to move.
Let's see, can I see that?
Of course, they're not all because of the schools.
All of them, not all of them are schools, so
Yeah, I
some
know,
of them
but-
are for other reasons.
Okay, so I don't know what the story is with Ashburton Elementary, but if
This
it's
is a much
school
older
construction,
draft. This is also much
if
older.
it's a
It's
school
nearby where I am.
construction, then it would be right in
Oh,
here.
good, it's going to say that?
Oh,
So
it
I
would
don't
say
know if Ashburton is one of the schools.
This is an older draft too.
'Cause I think people should know that it's...
Okay.
I assure you,
Mm-hmm.
we do have that on now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for clarifying
Place
that.
it's called Jim Shalley.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, then the next thing under new business is the verification plan. The verification plan is that the director, we're required to adopt a verification plan for voting supplies. The director or the designee will inspect and package 100% of the ballots for early voting and election day cards. Senior lead section will inspect and verify 100% of the critical items for early voting and election day. So that would be Ryan downstairs in the warehouse. And he will verify the contents of the red security bag, the orange provisional bag, the green supply bag, the blue supply bag, blue sign bag. And then the director or the deputy director will take a random selection of 10% of the precincts and verify the content of 10% of the red bag, orange bag, green bag, blue bag, the voting units, and the poll books. Then the board of election members will inspect one early voting card and verify the content, and 3 precincts assigned for election day. It's generally you do the early voting, you'll have to come in, and we've done that before. The 3 precincts we normally do on the last day of early voting. You guys come here, you pick 3 precincts, and then you work in teams to verify those. The voting equipment, senior IT manager and section leads will verify and conduct the procedures of the LNA requirements as delineated in the Conducting the Election Guide for 100% of the voting units, poll books, and electrical peripherals. The director or designee will verify 10% of the election day equipment and 1 early voting center and for the conduct of logic and accuracy. And the boards will conduct a public demonstration in accordance to the state board election requirements. The chief election judges are to verify the contents of the red security bag and the orange provisional bag by the night prior to the election assignment. Chief judges will contact the Board of Elections if there's any missing supplies by Monday night before Election Day on June 25th. And the board staff will send runners to provide the supplies.
Is there anything different in this than what we've done?
No, not really. It's the same verification plan.
A question.
Sure.
Is the timing of the election day verification that we have at 5:30 on the day the early voting ends, is that something that's a requirement, or is that something that we have?
We have to do it. The only thing would be maybe we could move it up to 4 o'clock, but we have to print all of the precincts and then get them loaded, broken down by precinct. So, as you can imagine, 750,000 names broken down by precinct into small books takes a little bit of time. So, I mean, we get the county print shop to turn it around as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, my only concern is just that getting up here by 5:30 with traffic, etc. It's sometimes not the easiest time to get here.
I appreciate that. I am open to starting it earlier, but Monday, the Monday of early voting is when when the voter file is it's supposed to be finalized. Then we take that file, download it, send it to the county print shop, and the county print shop starts printing our precinct register pretty much 20 hours a day, and then it comes up here and our guys split it up, put it in the red bag so that if the poll books go down, we have a way to let people know.
But it starts the Monday. It starts the Monday of early voting, meaning that's the day that we're scheduled to meet, I believe.
Yeah, but Thursday is the earliest I can have the red bag, which is the most critical bag, ready for you to verify.
Okay. I don't know if others feel the same way about the timing. I just know that getting here.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at it's on June 21st, and it's also on November 1st.
Do you need all of this? Isn't it all 1 and 1? One from each party?
Well,
no, it's multiple teams.
If you want one person to inspect 3 different.
Oh, okay, but so it's pairs.
It's pairs.
Okay.
Yeah. One Democrat, one Republican.
Okay. I got you.
It's interesting this year that the 4th of July will fall right in the middle of the canvas.
This is true.
So we're losing a canvas day, I guess?
Kind of, yeah.
That's usually when absentee?
No, provisional.
That's usually provisional. Okay, so we have 1 day provisionals instead of 2?
You'll still
Hopefully.
have
You still have 2 provisionals. It just will go. It will start.
Just
Keep going. Okay.
But we don't have anything July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Is that correct?
In a perfect world,
I say.
Don't ask.
so
I don't know if anyone
will
feels
the
that.
board adopt this
That's fine.
verification plan for the 2018 election cycle?
I move adoption.
I second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
Do we have
Is anyone interested in the time of the supply bag verification, moving it a little bit earlier?
I don't think anybody has any objection.
That's fine. You
Yeah.
tell me what time you want.
what time?
What time would you be ready?
4:30?
4 o'clock or 4:30?
Well, we can do it at 4.
Either one is okay.
Okay. I will make sure Ryan and the print shop meet that deadline.
Is that just for June, or do you want to?
I'm suggesting
now.
I'm suggesting it for both.
Both, for
Well,
the primary and general?
Now, we also could see how it goes in June. You know,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
See, to-
4 o'clock, is that
4
it?
o'clock?
4 o'clock instead of 5:30.
and
9
that's,
a.m.
what's the date again?
From 10 p.m.
The first one is
June 21st.
Is June 21st, and the second one is November 1st.
You say 4 or 4:30? 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
And when's the second one, Dave?
November 1st.
Right.
Okay. Now we'll address security.
Yeah, I discussed this topic with Kevin earlier. We're going to ask you to, make your presentation, and then I know there's some follow-up and questions that a number of us feel we should go into executive session.
Okay.
Marianne, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.
You got any more of these, Mary?
No, I just,
Oh, it's just
uh,
just one? Oh, you got it. Okay. They're coming the other way, too.
Do they have them?
Yeah, they have them. Everybody's good.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sure.
Janet, is this a PowerPoint?
yeah.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Is this what you saw at the?
First thing in the middle
No,
of it.
no, different. No.
What is that? I have it on mine.
It's placeholder for a photograph.
Oh, you can put,
I could put your photograph to show
Doesn't mean
that you're the
anything.
one who was logged.
got it.
All right. So this is the physical, procedural, and operational security for addressing Montgomery County for methods, leaving nothing to chance. So preparing under the current environment regarding security, we would look at facility or facilities that are election administrative offices, the personnel of the county election office, training facility of the polling place workers, polling places or other voting sites inside it. So the interesting stakeholders are, of course, local government because they fund us, elected officials and their lawyers, candidates and their lawyers, political parties and their lawyers, academics, now the Homeland Security at the federal level, the news media, election poll workers, and voters. So who is it that creates the greatest threat? That's one of the questions that's being asked. So this is a constant tug of war between transparency versus security. So where do we begin? What are our priorities? Who can help our agency? And when can it be accomplished? Security, examine what is known and what we can get at little or no cost for the department. The reality is that Montgomery County and many county elected officials are fighting with roads departments, fire, police, schools. So we have to really pay attention to our budget. So the question is this facility secure? What's the plan if there were a fire or flood, earthquake, tornado, bomb scare? Where could this office go to process registrations, prepare voting equipment, tabulate results, or conduct the canvass? All of our security systems that are related to this operation have passwords, and we have a key management plan. There's a formal agreement. What can your county do to help you in the planning process? We do have a formal continuity of operation plan that we were aided by the emergency management of the Department of Montgomery County. We do security background checks on all temporary and permanent staff and fingerprint all the staff. So where does this all begin with the rise in security? For us, it started with the Beltway sniper. On October 2nd, we had one individual shot and killed by the sniper 3 miles from our old board office on Twinbrook Park.
Twinbrook Park.
Yeah, anyway. And then October 3rd, we had another individual murdered. And the impact immediately was we were then between two schools. And we saw the police going up and down the street. The schools were under lockdown. Parents were being, people were trying to reach their kids and kids their parents. And election judges became reluctant to coming to our facility because of all of the tragedy. And then it turned into a debate with the board because there were individuals that were advocating that voters be allowed to stand in line inside the actual polling room before the polls opened because of safety issues, and there was a division. Finally, I received a call from the commander of the Maryland State Patrol requesting photographs of all the polling places that have trees surrounding the facility. Now, coming from Nebraska, there aren't a lot of trees. So to me, that would have been a reasonable request. But from my perspective, we had to have pictures of everything. The second floor, then Doug Duncan and Bill Mooney were instrumental in putting together the resources to help this department respond to that request. But when and the police officers and the fire people that I worked with, even though nobody was real happy about how it all had to come together so fast, we believed it was a foundation to establish a great rapport between this department and public safety. So what do? We have sign-in sheets at both levels for all visitors. You have to have a badge to get into the building. Photographs of all the polling places and early voting centers are provided that we provide to all public safety in this area. We've built on that polling place information from that time forward. We have cameras in and out of the office and in the warehouse. We have a panic button that's key to the local county security up front. We've increased spending on security every year, and that's part of the future. Police officer is at this office on election day, serving as a liaison between the police districts and the emergency command center. It's not unusual that there will be federal funds made available for the general election, and they open the emergency command center. And so we always send someone from the Board of Elections to sit there. And if you've ever been to the emergency command center, it's a great site. It has photographs. You could see just about anything that's going on in the county. And they have great contacts so that if we have a water main break, that not only, of course, we have the Tom Street's name and address and phone number, we also are able to reach out to the Emergency Command Center to address the issue. Locks are changed out at all early voting sites. Board of Election controls access to that area, beginning normally about Monday before early voting, and then the last day of early voting. Personnel security. We instill in the staff the need to protect all the data and databases stored here at the facility. They are instilled that personal information needs to be protected, and hopefully leadership is setting the standard. Emergency contacts for staff, and we try to maintain up-to-date identification badges, and again, the sign-in sheets and the sign-in log for all of the systems for Maryland voters, and Electionware, which is the voting system. So here's a picture of one of the badge scans, and then keys and locks. Expect to change those out frequently because keys walk away. We've reviewed the physical security of our state servers. We have a backup system for our Electionware server. The County Department of Technology supports this department with firewalls and constantly patches. Nightly, the county pushes out to all of the terminals any updates to help prevent viruses and other nasty things that are going around. We have emergency plans for the site for fire, bomb, earthquake, tornado, active shooter, and it is either provided or shown to the staff. The doors leading to secure areas are protected by our security system, and we targeted obviously where the paper ballots are. And we used to hold election judge personnel files in the judge suite. Now it's all moved electronically, so it's safeguarded behind the county firewalls. The data are servers that are used for transmission with the state and also are being upgraded in terms of security. And we also have limited doors to enter and leave the facility, but meet fire code requirements. We wrote our plan with the local emergency management office. We created a formal plan to share space if the site were to go down for whatever reason. We need, Chris is our operations disaster planning individual, and she maintains the books on where we go and what we do. We work with law enforcement to use their resources. So a win-win for us is we always have the K-9 police come in advance of the election to confirm that the facility is safe, and then we lock down the facility till election night at 8 p.m. and then obviously everything's coming back. We used the video from the FBI after I consulted with Chief Major as to which one is the best one to use to deal with the active shooter event. Then state resources. One of the things we do during the election is Homeland Security and the state's Office of Emergency Management and the County Office of Emergency Management are part of an overall communications network that we continue to talk with, and they're aware of what we're doing, and they allow us and share with us the information, as they say, the chatter that's out there. And so if they think there's significant chatter, then it's elevated up to the Chief Major and obviously the State Patrol. So one of the things that I see is that we flipped the challenge of trying to do 255 photographs of 255 polling places to developing a really great working relationship with public safety as well as State Patrol from that point. Chain of command, we developed checklists, we've established an emergency action plan, we have a power management plan for our site and our polling places. In early voting sites, we have an emergency generator assigned to our department, and we've had an opportunity on several occasions to put that power management plan into place. We have a snow plan for schools, private and county, with plans for those locations that fail to clear the snow. We arrange in advance specific administrative county or state judges for legal emergencies. We have a media plan to push out for information. As I've said before, police and fire, public safety have all the mapping of all the voting systems in our backup sites with photos. Communicate, and document. So we established a list of alternate polling places for every precinct that's pre-designated, and the public safety knows about that. Photographs of our sites and voting locations, again, going to public safety. We stage standby equipment around the county for emergency utilization, and we work with other departments to designate who will be assigned to our department the day before Election Day and the day after election. Again, these are county employees from other departments that are supporting us. We designate one person, which is Chris Razizit, to assemble all the emergency phone lists that are provided here for our use on elections, well, starting with the early voting. And that includes the election judges, the roamers, the League of Women Voter Ladies, and any county personnel that are assigned to us. We beg, borrow, or cry for communication devices. You know, we use old standby walkie-talkies, probably similar to what you've seen in a vintage World War II movie. We lease van with standby resources filled with furniture and all of the bags. That's not precinct specific. We depend on staff. Each employee is expected to know this responsibility and they sign off on it. The judges have to have rules of security behavior that they're expected to sign off on, otherwise they're not going to be an election judge. This is what we provide to the police. So this is an overview of one of our polling places, the Holiday Park Senior Center. We let the police know where we expect the entrance to be, where there's handicapped parking, where we would expect the people electioneering would be outside of that red zone. This is a diagram that they would see that we expect the polling place to be set up in this manner. We have emphasized with the election judges, particularly the chief, if you're going to change it, put it on your site map so that we can make the changes to our records. We show where the individuals would be coming in to vote. We show where they're supposed to be lined up. And then this is just a generic. Step one is for fire. The second is the bomb threat. So each site you can see on this map, and the chief judges have this, where the rally point is, so that if there were a fire, the number one is where the staff or all the election judges and voters should queue up and wait for the fire department. And if there's a bomb threat, which is number one, that's where we expect them to. And the chief judges are apprised of this and are expected to know it. Polling places and early voting, we prefer to use county-owned government locations, as the board members have heard us many, many times advocating for government locations. We assign cell phones to all of our managers. We ask the chief judges to share their cell phone numbers, but we do not make them. As I said before many times, you know, our role with public safety is critical. I mean, these individuals are going to the polling places. I send them a list of polling places that we believe we will have traffic issues. We have undercover police officers going through polling places, and uniformed police obviously will come into polling places. Now, I will tell you that we've received complaints in the past from voters, chief judges, and whatnot, that they don't like a police officer to come into their polling place, but we do it for safety.
And what reason did they give for that?
I don't know. I just know that the police, the first thing they said to me when I was setting up our meetings this year.
You can discourage voting. People get intimidated by police officers.
Some people do, not everyone. All the election judges are trained on the emergency procedures, and they're supposed to share it out to their fellow election judges. Phone numbers need to be provided. We have emergency contacts for every election worker that we have in the field. And we have precinct support for election day. We make sure that we get a driver's, if they're working for us or volunteering time, we get a copy of their driver's license number. So the election units are never connected to the internet. The equipment is stored in a secure location. The poll books are updated the Saturday prior to the election with updated registration and voter history. That information is a manual handoff from the state board to Jerry Corshi and Janet Ross. We have everything is sealed with numbered seals and cross-checked with the judge integrity log. I'm talking about the DS200 and the ballot marking device. Voting teams of 2 persons, ideally of different political parties, participate in the opening and closing. Logic and accuracy testing is done, and there's a hash mark placed on the system at the end. Flash drive is sequenced to the precinct and unit. Use of tamper tape and seals and wire, plastic seals, and are color-coded for the election judges. The integrity log with the critical information is supposed to be matched with the seals. 100% verification of the previous night election. So the next day, we take all of the data that we receive and we upload it again to make sure that we get the same numbers. Units are never connected to the internet. So our election judges are verifying all the seals on the integrity documents and making sure that there's a zero report that's run prior to opening the polls, and it's supposed to be made available for public review. As I said before, we do 100% verification of the previous election night to validate the election judge totals sent in with the temporary election results. Turnout numbers are provided periodically at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Precinct posts election results from each DS200 at the precinct, and we try to emphasize that it's supposed to be in an area that a voter could come and see after 8 o'clock. So this is the integrity report for the DS200, in which the various seal numbers are reported, and they verify those. They verify the polling place integrity report, ballot bin, chain of custody. There's a seal, as you can see, the red seal on the blue ballot bin that has voted ballots in it. This is the chain of custody form that's used by the closer judges that are bringing back the poll books as well as the flash drive from the DS200. This is our 11 o'clock media. So that's brought back, and we have a printout of the results as well as the media that's uploaded at our regional collection sites. Montgomery County Department of Technology is responsible for numerous systems, including the Board of Elections. Our employees have different tiers of access to the various systems. The voting system is federally certified. The dedicated server system is in a secure room and is used only for specific elections and transactions. As I said before, criminal background checks were fingerprinted. We have an auditable security system, valid accounting, and believe me, that's tedious. Standard opening and closing procedures. We have the audits that are now done, logic and accuracy. Reports are reviewed by the state board before anything goes, well, normally it's probably before the election. Election judge training is standardized so that the message is uniform. The units, the flash drive, and the ballots are all married. The data encryption, and there's a data encryption and digital signature with the flash drives. And 100% of the ballots imaged and tabulated separately to verify the results. The voting unit tabulation is reconciled to the voter authority cards. So that's what's going on in the warehouse in the basement. We have individuals comparing the integrity reports and making sure that the voter authority card numbers match. There's the public testing of the system. So we have received national awards for our precinct performance measures, and we do an analysis of the election workers in compliance with the critical steps to ensure the integrity of the elections by judging them on opening on time, posting the zero report, posting the turnout numbers, completion of the critical documents, which would be the integrity reports, closing timely, and positive feedback from the voters. These are part of the post-election audit. This is what the trainers are reviewing downstairs in the basement, and where Ryan is working with them to reconcile the number of votes cast with the voter authority card or provisional ballots. This, as you can see on the lock, is a blue seal, and that has a number on it. It's part of the integrity report. As you can see right here is a close-up. This is what the cart would look like, and it has all the various seals, as well as we have numbered ballots with the infamous ballot stub numbers on it. This is the DS200 that has is color-coded. Certain security tags are not to be opened, and other ones can be opened. This is the poll book. It has a seal on that, a numbered seal. This is the express vote. It also has a tamper tape seal. Do you have any questions?
Well, I think, Margaret, thank you. That was excellent. May I suggest that we go into executive session?
Margaret, let me ask a quickie. Does the state have any override on any of these, anything, or is it all Montgomery County? I know it's state equipment, but all Montgomery County has the total access. Nobody else can get into it.
You mean for the voting system?
Yeah, all of it, like keys, like any.
Well, no, they don't have any keys or access to this building. The regional site unit person that's assigned to us from the State Board of Elections has to sign in. ES&S has to sign in. State Board staff has to sign in.
Margaret, I think we want to get into specifics about our facilities, and
Okay.
I think we should go into executive session. But Barbara, did you have something?
But hold on.
With the minutes, yeah.
So let's.
So
There's a motion to go into executive session. By the way, let me ask the board. I'd like Mike Subin to stay. Are we prohibited from having Mike at our executive session?
Okay.
Can Mike stay?
Because
Because it's involving personnel.
For the first issue.
For the first issue, you can stay.
Yes. Okay. Mike,
Yeah.
can you stay for our first issue? Yes. Thank you, ladies. Good seeing you again.
Are we adjourning?
No, we're going into executive session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
A move.
Second? Is there a
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.